Hey, we're going to do another episode of Unplugged with Pete. My guest right here is Sam Thigpen, CEO of Sapphire Gas Solutions. Sam, introduce yourself. We're going to get really deep in what it is you do and learn a little bit about Sam.
Yeah.
But how'd you get your start? I mean,
No,
you didn't wake up one day and say, I'm just CEO of Sapphire Gas Solutions, right?
No, I didn't wake up one day thinking that. First of all, thanks for having me on here. Look forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely.
No, I actually didn't wake up one day and just become CEO of Sapphire. You know, I actually started out in the gas processing business and the pipeline business. So I've been in the natural gas space for.
You're an OG guy from the start.
I am OG guy. I started in 1998 in the
Right.
pipeline business and worked in the industry for about, I guess, 8 years or so.
Now, when you say worked in the industry, what does that entail?
Yeah, so I was
You were slinging wrenches and drilling?
I
or?
was. Well, no, I was a plant operator for a cryo plant. So we processed natural gas and stripped out NGLs, sent the methane down the pipeline. So it was very much a midstream operation. Went from there to midstream services. We were building pipelines and gas.
Now I want to interrupt you a bunch because maybe not everybody knows the gas side of the business,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And you say NGLs. What's an NGL?
So natural gas.
You got to talk
liquid.
to me like I'm a child,
Yep.
like
so,
my wife.
So when natural gas comes out of the wellhead, right, it's all combined. And so you take it through a process facility. They'll take the methane out, which is what we see mostly in the pipeline.
The good stuff?
The good stuff. But everything else from ethane down is all the heavy, so that gets sent to somewhere, to another.
So there's somebody else in the value stream that says, I want that specific piece of what
That's
comes
right.
out of the well.
Yeah, so they'll take the methane that goes into a pipeline, and that's what may go to your house, go to a business, go to your generators.
Go to a data center.
Go to a data center. Everything from the ethane down, so that gets fractionated out as propane, butane, ethylene, all the heavy liquid natural gas hydrocarbons.
So that's the NGL.
That's the NGL.
Got it.
Yep. So, yeah, when I started out, I was a plant operator in one of those facilities. We took the methane cut. We sent everything else to Mont Belvieu, and that's where they made propane and butane and all those heavies.
And you had drill in the well? And
No, we were just on the process side. So we were.
So somebody else drilled the well.
Yeah, they drilled it, they completed it.
Sucked the gas out, sent it to you,
That's
as is out of the ground.
As is,
Okay.
yep. So a little bit of cleanup, that knock really heavies out at the wellhead, knock a lot of water out, whatever it is. But they would send it to us to actually get processed. So that's where we started to make products that could then go to market from there, from the gas stream side.
So you're an operator for 8 years. You did that for 8 years?
No, I was an operator for 3 years, and then in typical fashion, right? Big companies sell their assets, so we went through a transaction, and the new company come in and said, "Hey, we've got our own operators. We're going to go through layoffs, right? We're going to lay some folks off." So at 22 years old, I got my first severance package and went through my first layoff in the energy space.
You say first, there's another one coming somewhere.
There was another one
Okay, all
coming.
right.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
stick with the
right.
first one.
So yeah, I left there, went into the gas
So
pipeline.
you got a sack full of money because you're an operator. Operators
Well,
make some decent money? Or?
Yeah, at 22 years old, anything's a sack full of money, right?
Okay, yeah,
So-
that's right.
No, it was good enough that so I was actually going to college and being a plant operator at the same time. So
All right,
I took
pulling
a
double duty.
semester and just worked on school for a semester. I got my next job opportunity going into the gas pipeline service side of the business. So we were doing gas measurement services, analytical
So
services.
somewhere in the ecosphere of gas.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and we did that. I did that all over the country. So that was the first opportunity I got to travel. And
So you had 23, 24,
yeah, I
new
was
job,
20,
traveling.
23, traveling.
Unencumbered? Married?
No, unencumbered. Not married. And so yeah, that was interesting. That's when I started traveling. That's when I got in the service business. We did a lot of construction, facility construction.
Have tools, will travel?
Have tools, will travel. Yeah, did offshore work, did onshore work. So just pretty much.
Now, for people that don't know, what's offshore look like in the gas side?
Offshore.
Is that on a helicopter? I'm going out to a rig? I mean, is that
no.
on a
So
supply boat?
so here's the funny thing. So I never took a helicopter because I can't swim.
Are you afraid of heights, or you just can't
I'm
swim?
afraid of heights and I can't swim. So I couldn't go through Hewitt training, so you had to go through the underwater training in a helicopter where they roll you upside down and dunk you underwater. And I couldn't swim, so I never wanted to take that. So I would have to take a crew boat, and I would have to swing on a rope from the crew boat to the offshore
That's somehow
platform.
better than a helicopter?
In my mind at the time it was, because I didn't have to get in that pool, you know?
Yeah.
So here we are all those years later, and I love fishing offshore, and I still can't swim. So it never...
They have those Gumby suits for that, right?
That's right, that's right.
Grab your bag and go?
Yeah, so now offshore was interesting because I was doing gas measurement, I was doing instrumentation, I was doing communication systems, so I was doing the I&E side of offshore.
And when you say gas measurement, and again, I want you to ask a lot of questions. Is that the composition of the gas that's coming out of the well? Is that, what is that measure? Like just pressures and fuel quality, the chemical makeup? I mean, I don't know what that means.
Kind of all of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah, so when we're talking, if you think about gas measurement, when you think about a natural gas pipeline, the gas measurement, the meter, that's the cash register, right?
Right.
So that's where we have to know what the composition is. We have to know how much flow is going through there, at what pressures, what temperature.
So not gas chromatograph, but more actual flow meter and everything else?
And gas chromatographs, yeah. So all of that was part of our gas measurement. My responsibility as a measurement guy.
That's some high-end measurement stuff. I mean,
Very.
that's not, I'm going to go to the Home Depot, Lowe's, and go find a gas chromatograph.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was very, very high end. All custody transfer equipment. So very high accuracy, plus or minus 0.25% accuracy.
That's how you bill, right?
Yeah, and that's where the money comes from in the gas business. So that all has to be right. And so that was what I did in the service side. We would provide those measurement services, doing calibrations, installations, maintenance on all of that equipment for other pipeline companies.
So a meter goes down, they can't bill? Or
That's
is it
right.
guesstimate? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's pretty important, right?
Very important. Yeah. So you don't want to do anything wrong with that. That's definitely where the money comes from, right?
And now you're flying you say all over. So where's the gas infrastructure? You say you did a lot of travel in the service business.
I
Is
did.
That
yeah.
California? Is that
New
Jersey?
I didn't make it out to California during that time. I was Texas, along the Gulf Coast, out to like Florida, up into Oklahoma. So probably the central to the eastern U.S. And then we started reaching up as I got out of that business. We started reaching up towards like Minnesota area. So, but never really went out west. So it was kind of West Texas was as far as I went, and then everything else was east of that.
Why would you want to go past West Texas?
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. No, it was. Well, why would you want to go to West Texas? Period.
There's that. Sorry, Texans. Yeah, there's that. I've been out that way.
Yeah, it's it's a tough world out there. It's a tough world. I have a lot of admiration for the folks that make a career of living out there and working out there, because it's tough.
And it's not for everybody, right?
No, it's that. I mean, just like offshore is not for everybody either. That was a tough world. That was, when you asked about what was offshore like. There's always one way I explained offshore on a crew boat. They know 2 speeds: stop and go full throttle.
Right.
And it does not matter about the weather. It does not matter about how you feel. We're going stop or full throttle. And it was that I learned a lot about the things that I could cope with for a job.
Yeah, I mean, early on in my career, we'll stay focused on you, but early on in my career, I was a marine engineer. I worked on an oil tanker. We went past a lot of those rigs, and where the crew boats were coming in and out. And I was on the energy transportation side of 1,100-foot oil tanker.
Oh, wow.
Moving product from refinery to storage.
Yeah, okay.
Corpus Christi to Fort Lauderdale type of pickup drop off on the or Lake Charles or something like that.
Sure.
There's my Boston coming out, Lake Charles. Transport on that side. So I understand the crew boat side. So I would say you picked the right side to be on the boat.
Yeah.
Versus the helicopter.
Yeah.
From personal experience. But
I never could. I could never do the helicopter thing, and I was glad that I was in a world where I had that option.
Right.
Because I don't think I'd have done the helicopter at all. Like, I don't think I'd have made that.
You might have needed some coverage on that one. Yeah, I understand. So now your services business. You've been an operator. You did the services business on the measurement side.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
Well, so it was really interesting during that.
That sounds pretty interesting. And all of a sudden, you pivoted at some point to.
I did. So when I was in the service business, I had a boss that had been in the entire gas business, owned assets. He was in plants and measurement and pipeline operation. Had seen the whole gambit of the gas business. And an opportunity came up to go to a pipeline company to do gas measurement.
So somebody poached you. Somebody said, "Hey, who's this guy?"
Yeah, they did. But what was interesting is I'd been doing that service as a service, and this was an opportunity to do it for an asset owner. So kind of different set of priorities, different schedule.
I was gonna say, yeah, different schedule, different travel.
Yeah, different travel.
Different pay, hopefully.
It was, it was. I mean, it was different pay, but in those days, it wasn't significant different pay.
It wasn't like, hey, here's double the money.
It was just
you get the normal, like, I'm moving jobs.
It was an improvement,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
it was a step up the ladder, and
so better quality of life and better pay.
Yeah, and so did that for a couple of years, and then the last step that I took before I started what is now Sapphire, had been at that asset company for a couple of years. Another service company was formed under a private equity investment, and they asked me to come run their service division because one of the guys that was part of the founders is one of my old bosses at the last service company. So he had spun off, and
so you had a good brand.
Yeah,
Sam, good brand.
Yeah, so had a good reputation. They asked me to come help them. I did that for a year, and then that was my first foray into private equity, any kind of investment, not as an owner, but
right.
Working in a space. And after 1 year, they decided to shut the service division down and focus.
So you said
on,
first again, which is a prelude to the second.
Yeah, there's more than one of a lot of things in these stories, right? But yeah, they decided to shut the service business down. So 1 year into that, I'm out. The service group shut down, and so now I'm in my second effective layoff in 8 years in the industry, and that was
And you stuck to the industry?
I did,
because sometimes people go through the first one, they go through a RIF, reduction in force, right. And they kind of get snake bit a little bit, and maybe they stay, maybe they don't. And those that stay the second time around, right. They kind of reflect on am I in the right space? Am I in the right industry? I had similar experience in the nuclear industry. I did naval reactors, and after going out to sea, I worked naval reactors for a little bit, refueling submarines for the government, and I got into commercial nuclear when I worked for Emerson. And when Emerson had a RIF at one point in the 2008 timeframe, but when I was focusing on nuclear, then all of a sudden Fukushima happened. And they were talking about the nuclear renaissance in the United States at the time, and then Fukushima, and they were building Vogtle 3 and 4, the last two nuclear reactors to get built in the United States for Southern Company. And it was one of those, in my mind, I pivoted and I stayed with power, but I moved away from nuclear. Because at the time, pre-Fukushima, there was probably 25 to 30 nuclear reactors being permitted at the NRC.
Oh, wow.
And then Fukushima happened, and it went down to, let's just finish Vogtle 3 and 4. We don't know about this nuclear thing. And now there's been a resurgence, but there was a huge lot of uptick in nuclear at the time, and then one event happens, and it changes it, right? And again, I pivoted. So for you had the second kind of riff, and you stuck with it. So I give you credit for that.
Yeah, I stuck with it. Well, I'm a third generation in this business too. So my grandfather drilled and completed wells in South Texas before it was ever the Eagle Ford. This was probably in the 30s and 40s. And then he got into production. My dad started his career in production and moved into pipelines and compression facilities, so all midstream. I started in midstream, moved into service, and then became a business owner. So between the three generations, we've basically done everything in the gas business. And I think that was why I stuck with it, because it's what I knew, right? It's what I grew up with, and I knew the space. And but yeah, so I took that.
Sounds like we didn't want to let your family down.
Yeah,
Would they disown you? It's like
no, so it was interesting. When I was going to school, I was actually going to school.
There goes
for
Sam.
finance.
He's not in the gas industry anymore.
Yeah, right.
We used to know him. We used to
know that guy.
He used to be Ken. Now he's not.
No, I actually was going to school for finance. I wanted to get into investment banking when I was early on and when I was younger, and I don't know why, because nobody in my family had any background in that at all.
So you got a couple of the looks already. Like, you're going to do what?
Yeah, exactly.
Going to school for finance.
Yeah, that's right. And then ended up in the energy business anyway. So, but it's been a good business. Been a good
pressure.
business. Do what?
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Is that a gas joke? No pressure.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So now all of a sudden you're private equity, and you're entering into that space.
Yeah. So when I left that last that private equity startup, when they shut the service business down, I went to work for myself, And it all started out as, right, I had the contacts, I'd been in the business for a while, I just wanted to find something.
So you learned
to
a
do.
few things and said, I can do it better?
Didn't really think I could do it better, just thought I could just do it. I had enough
All right.
contacts that I could just go out and find some business. And honestly, just wanted to make a mortgage payment, right? Like
Right.
I needed to make a mortgage payment the next month. Made that payment, said, okay, well that worked. Let me try it for another month, and made that payment. And 3 months later, I'm like, wait, I'm busy, and I'm making more money than I was making working for somebody else. And that was how it all got started. I worked by myself for about the first year, a little over a year, and I had 3 customers at the end of a year that I was working for and doing things.
So what's the secret sauce there? I mean, a lot of people start a business. I mean, it's well known. A lot of people start a business, fails early on.
Yeah.
What would you attribute that success to?
22-hour days. That's what.
22-hour days?
Yeah, that's
No employees, 22-hour days?
Yeah,
just
I mean,
hungry?
ultimately that was the thing, right? I was hungry. Yeah, and I hustled. And there was a time before I hired my first employee, I'd wake up at 4 and I'd work for one customer from 5 to 8. I'd work 8 to 4 for another one, and then I'd do like 4 to 6 or 8 at night for another one. And then I would go home and do invoicing and do paperwork, and I'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours, and I'd start it all over again. And so when entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs ask me, like, what's it really take? That's the grind. That's what it really takes. There's no way around the fact that you have to go grind early on. You have the unicorns
Right.
that invest in something and it becomes spectacular in 6 months or 12 months, but those are unicorns. That's not
Right.
the real entrepreneurial story in
Right.
99% of the cases, right?
And that's
So-
normally easy made, easy lost sometimes too.
Yeah,
let
that's right.
me go buy some toys and let me go do all sorts of stuff. And there's no
Yeah.
work ethic behind, or grind, what I would call grind behind getting there.
That's right. Yeah. And so,
So you're a grinder. You're grinding it out that first year.
just grinding it out.
Sounds like you're still grinding it out.
I do, not as hard as I used to, but yeah, still a lot of longer days than, you think after. So this is our 20th year anniversary. So I started
Congratulations,
business-
by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. 20 years ago this year. But yeah, we're still grinding because there's still more things to do. And I think
Right.
that's the difference from a longevity standpoint. How do you make 20 years is constantly reinventing yourself. You're constantly thinking about the next opportunity. You're constantly thinking about how you could do things better that you've been doing for 10 years. And I think as long as you keep that mentality, the opportunities are out
Right.
there.
You got to find them. You got to make the opportunity.
You have
right?
to make it, yeah, and you just have to go after it. Yeah.
So 20, you say 20 years, and again, congratulations. That's a Herculean accomplishment. So what's the short story between Sam, long days, 22-hour days, like you said, 3 customers, working by yourself, to what's your profile now 20 years later? More than just Sam now, right?
Yeah, more than just me, more than just a couple of folks. We've got
More than
100
3 customers.
Yeah, more than 3 customers. We've got 120, 130 people in the business now. We're not gargantuan, but we're solid. We support a lot of families, and they have a pretty solid job. I've got probably around 15 to 20% of my workforce has been with us a decade or longer.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
so that's a pretty
So
cool
min- minimal attrition then.
Yeah.
They come on at Sapphire and they say, hey,
and they stay.
and
They stay.
Why do
yeah.
they stay?
It's
Again, that secret sauce question.
I think-
simple, not easy, but why do they stay?
no, I think it's because we're doing something real. Like somebody asked me the other day, they said, hey, how do you we were talking about employees and people staying there for a long time, and how do you build a culture that they want to get up and be a part of something? The interesting thing is it's not necessarily a culture I built. We inherently do something that people want to be a part of every day. We provide.
But you reinforce it though. You got to take.
Oh, for sure.
I'm the same
yeah.
way. I'm very hey, I'm very humble about things that I've done and teams that I've led. But some of that's you, right?
I mean that's definitely a part of it. But if you think
if you were just kicking your feet up and not grinding like you just
yeah.
described, I mean nobody follows that type of leader.
No,
right?
that's right. That's right. They you have to see.
Regardless of the mission, they'll go say, I can find this mission somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. And so I think that's I think that is definitely a part of it. It is. But what we do every day is pretty interesting. We truck natural gas to communities or to businesses that otherwise can't get energy. So if we don't show up, that affects other people's lives. So we kind of have that built into our business that we're
So let's
contributing.
let's pause and go back a second. And so, Sapphire, what does Sapphire do, right? So let's not skip over the obvious. We talked about your background, and we very quickly got into Sapphire.
Yeah.
Now, is that a services business? What exactly does Sapphire does?
Yeah. So
Sapphire do
Sapphire is a
today, because it sounds like it changed a little bit.
It changed. Today we are a virtual pipeline company. So what that means is we do everything a pipeline company does, a natural gas pipeline company does, but we do it on wheels. We truck liquefied and compressed natural gas to industrial users, power generation, communities, homes, when they can't get traditional pipeline infrastructure, or that infrastructure is down for service or maintenance.
So service maintenance is an outage in the normal pipe that's there, transmission pipe, whatever. You come in and fill a void during
That's right.
a maintenance period, so to speak.
Yep.
But what else? So filling the gap. So there's that piece, and then you said more temporary gas until gas interconnect comes in, or
Yeah, it could be.
I'm sure people don't want to rent virtual gas forever, right?
Yeah, yes.
Or maybe they do.
So some people do because they need that natural gas, and they're just never going to get a pipeline, right? They're too far. There is no infrastructure. We're the only option. Or it might
Love
be,
those customers too, by the way.
Yeah,
Love all
them.
your customers.
Yeah,
But those are special customers, right?
But so like for a power generation, if you're going to need power generation, eventually you're going to want a pipeline for that, but that pipeline might be 3 or 5 years from now. So we're there to fill that void until traditional infrastructure can be there, and that could be for anything. We do a lot of asphalt business, agricultural business, power generation, just straight industrial customers that have manufacturing. We've got a customer in the north right now. They got a big contract to manufacture more product, and so they talk to their power company and their gas utility for expanding their factory. No power available, so they're bringing in power and they're bringing our gas in, so they can take on.
And they said April, but not April next month. April like 2029 or something like that.
Of some year in the future, right? So that's where we play. That's the crux of what we do. One of the differences about that is we do that with both liquefied and compressed natural gas.
So what's the difference? I think I know the difference.
No,
but
so
one's liquid and one's
liquefied
gas,
natural gas. You take gas out of a pipeline, you get it to negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit, turns into a liquid methane. We can put that in a cryogenic tanker and we can deliver that. Compressed natural gas, we take that same gas out of a pipeline, compress it to 3,600 psi, put it in a trailer, and then we haul that down the road. So we'll haul around 60% of the volume in a compressed tube trailer as we can in a liquefied
So
trailer.
do you have like a megawatt conversion? So if I burn a certain amount of heat on our Enchanted Rock gen set, how many megawatt hours would you have in a LNG? Maybe give me a ratio of like similar size compressed natural gas tanker truck versus an LNG.
You're going to maybe do math on the spot.
Is it 5X? Is it 10X? No, you can just, I don't know. We've been having our coffee here, so
that's right.
But give me a ballpark, right? So
Yeah.
a CNG trailer versus an LNG trailer is 100X, 5X?
No, so it's pretty close to 2X. So if I can deliver for some megawatt number, if I can deliver a trailer of LNG per hour to run that power need, I'm probably going to need 2 to 3 trailers of CNG to run that same power need. Because
if a potential data center customer is watching and they're saying, "Hey, I'm going to move and transition from a diesel to natural gas kind of solution, whether it's temp power, bridge power, flex power, backup power," and they don't necessarily have a gas interconnect, because electrical interconnects are sometimes just like gas interconnects where there's a time to, hey, I got to build a lateral but I build data centers for a living. Me waiting 2 years for a gas lateral to get built and have gas meter and utility grade natural gas, that doesn't work for me.
That's right. Yeah.
Sam, what can you do for
me?
And
that's where we fill in,
Yeah.
right? That's where we fit in. That's where we fill in the gap. That's our business, and we set that solution up so when they do get that gas lateral, we can simply just move away, right? Whether we build some kind of a manifolding or piping infrastructure on site, or we have some type of infrastructure that we have to build for what we do, all you have to do now is just connect that gas pipeline to that same infrastructure, and you can move on about. So we make it very seamless to transition from our service to the actual pipeline service, because eventually they may need us to come back if that pipeline
They're gonna
has to
do
go
a
down for maintenance.
Maintenance, or
Right.
they're going to do a second site. And man, that was such a great service.
Exactly.
Let me call Sapphire and hit
Yeah.
hit the easy button.
That's right. Hit the easy button. Yeah.
Now we focus a lot in Enchanted Rock on the data center vertical, and this is massive AI growth. And if you read the news in the last, I don't know, 2 years, AI growth and everybody's need for power, right?
Sure.
Natural gas. I mean, wind and solar is great, but they have low capacity factor, meaning at some point you got to firm them up with dispatchable generation. They don't run 24/7, right?
Yeah.
And until like small modular reactors and nuclear and all the stuff I did 20 years ago gets miniaturized and propagated on the grid, natural gas is really going to be the solution or the bridge for the next 10 to 15 years, or probably well into the horizon. How has that changed your business? Because it seems like everybody's talking natural gas these days. Right?
They are, so it's starting to change our business. We haven't seen it significantly change yet, but what we have seen is the indicators that it is going to change significantly. 18 months ago, we had 1 or 2 conversations about maybe a data center need, a quarter, maybe. Hey, there's a thing that maybe they're going to go down for some temporary need. We actually have fueled data centers in Virginia with natural gas for a temporary need. We've done that. But it was all kind of very temporary. I would say over the last 12 months, we've seen that conversation change to, we need this as primary for some unknown period of time at this point.
In big numbers, too.
In big
right?
numbers.
They're not saying, I mean, I don't know what the deal was for you in Virginia, but I got to imagine it was smaller megawatts or smaller capacity versus some of the deals that we've looked at as Enchanted Rock from the bridge power. I mean, talking hundreds of megawatts at one site, and oh, by the way, I need bridge power. So I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, and some of those sites, utility gas is already available. Sure. And you and I and some of our team have already worked on some where utility gas is not available, right, and some unique situations there, and we can talk about those in a second. But like, what's that scale look like? Is that like, how, I mean, somebody says, hey, I need 500 megawatts of temporary gas. And not all at once. I need to build it in over the next 12 to 18 months. Like, that sounds like a lot. A lot to scale. Right?
It's a
From
lot.
the power side, it's a lot to scale. I mean, I don't know that the audience, some people do, some educated power folks probably understand what a gigawatt is, right? And what that looks like as a fossil base-loaded plant. For a gigawatt of power, like, that's a lot of stacks, that's a lot of turbines, that's a lot of coal-fired plant. A gigawatt's a lot, right? They can visualize that. But I mean, a gigawatt of gas, or 500 megawatts of gas, you make it easy, 500 megawatts worth of gas.
That's a lot by trailer.
That's a lot by trailer, right?
Yeah.
And that's some of the demands that you're probably seeing, or at least hey, is this something Sapphire could do? Can they give me a ramp rate, a pathway to 500 plus megawatts of gas until utility is brought in?
So what we're seeing is, with the right parameters, with the right strategy, we're seeing being able to get to 150 to 200 megawatts of power by LNG. I can't see where I could do that with CNG. It's just too fast. There was too many deliveries. LNG, I can build tons of storage, so I can have lots of buffer on site. So that helps my logistics planning. But over 200 megawatts, and that's a big stretch still, but over that, you're talking about an enormous amount of trucking. Right. And it has to come from a LNG supply source that is so close that if it's that close, can we just build a pipeline at that point? Now, we can put LNG supply sources in.
So there's a sweet spot, right?
Yeah, there's a sweet spot. And what we're seeing is, kind of under 200 megawatts with the right conditions. With not great conditions, it's probably about 100 megawatts. And it's
100 to 200 megawatts. You can do that forever and a day, under the right circumstances.
Yeah, under the right circumstances.
You can virtual pipeline.
Yeah, we could do that. That's right.
Hey, natural gas is 100 miles away, and nobody's going to run
100 miles away. I've got an LNG supply that I can put in there. I can build the dedicated storage at their facility to give me that buffer for logistics. We can build a solution that works, and
so
it
if
would
somebody
work
has
every
an
day.
economic reason where it's got to be natural gas, they can play in that 100 to 200. It's going to obviously be more expensive maybe less expensive than building the lateral 50, 80, 100 miles, right? but you could do that, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty. I mean, 200 megawatts is pretty impressive.
It's a lot of
And when you're
power.
building an LNG
We are.
facility.
Yeah, we're building an LNG facility. That's right. And so what we're looking at is,
on campus somewhere, right? On-prem.
yeah, we're building a storage and vaporization system on-prem, and we're building some liquefaction as close as we can get to where that gas infrastructure is. Now, the way we look at that too is, if you're going to need that as your primary supply for gas for your power needs for a data center for 3, 5, 8, 10 years, that all makes sense. If you need it for 20, 30 years, well, now maybe just building that 100 miles of pipe does make sense at that point, right? But what's interesting about this whole deal is, even if they get pipe or they get utility grid, all of that storage and vaporization we build on site is now just your backup fuel supply.
Right.
It doesn't
need
have
less
to go
trucks to
away.
maybe- yeah.
It's going to have a longevity of 20, 30 years that you
So
get
you
to
either
use all
solve the
that.
bridge gap of utility gas won't come in just yet. So we're going to give you bridge gas per se versus bridge power, and your bridge gas leads to bridge
Yeah.
power. But then also there's the leave it in some capacity for utility gas somehow goes away, right? When you were here, winter. I mean, your business was operation during Winter Storm Uri. You lived through Uri. I lived through Uri
Yeah.
in Texas.
Yeah.
I think there was the Rio Grande had an issue with one major piece of gas pipeline had a crack in it before Uri, and then maintenance down for maintenance, and then Uri hit. And I know personally we brought in, I think, Sapphire for some temp gas on one of our microgrids, or CNG, I believe. And
I think you're right, yeah.
CNG, and it worked out great. So with that being said, what do you do for winterization or anything like that? So, I mean, you got temporary gas. Is there anything special you need to do for any type of weather, or is it kind of set and forget? type
No,
of thing?
I mean, that's really the nice thing about what we do. It's there. It doesn't matter if it's cold outside or hot outside. The systems work. They're meant for that type of environment. We actually do winter work today. So we
Okay.
actually set up what we call winter peak shaving. New York, Tennessee, Michigan, Colorado.
What does that mean? Winter
So-
peak shaving. I mean, I know what it means from a power side of
Yeah.
peak shaving, but
Well, so-
what is that? Is that different on the gas side?
Not
Higher
really.
demand? Is that? Maybe there's higher demand because
There is a little higher demand today. So 3 or 4 years ago, we had a really nice business there, and every year we've seen it increase because of the gas infrastructure constraints, growth, development, gas constraints. Even if they're building new pipe, they can build houses faster than they can build pipe, right? So it's just constant constraint. And so what we do is the same thing we would do for a data center. We're going to set storage and vaporization on site, maybe from November to March. And if it gets cold enough and your gas supply starts to diminish because of capacity constraints,
everybody turns their heat on, right?
Yeah, everybody turns their heat on, and our gas supply just kicks in, and it's supplemental to the system. So nobody on the downstream side, none of the end users know that gas is coming from my tank or that well in Pennsylvania 200 miles away. It's just all gas going to that burner for the heater.
So you just have a meter and then you build a utility back and
that's
say,
it.
hey, I flowed this amount of gas.
That's it, yeah. And so that system works really well. We've done some really awesome winter peak shaving projects. And so again, it's very similar to what you would see in like an emergency response for a data center. Hey, we're going to lose grid power tomorrow. I need to turn this gas on for those generators, and we're
So
going
as
to
we
generate
talk
power.
flex capacity, and there's a lot of flex capacity type of conversations of if I bring my own generation on site and I can take my load off the grid, these large data centers, and the adoption's getting there, and I can or push the power back to the grid. Enchanted Rock has been doing this for all of our installations, non-data center related, for a while of dual purpose microgrid where we either 100% back up the location in a utility outage, or in high peak demand, we push the power back where we can monetize it and sell the power back to the grid, right? We do a lot of that in Texas. But now with data centers and the interconnection queue being so long of somebody saying, hey, I want to put a data center over here and it's going to be 500 megawatts. Well, the utility maybe can't give you 500 megawatts today. On an 8760 basis of 365 days, 24 hours a day, 8760 number of hours in a year, we can only give you either wait 6 years or now wait a second, what if I have my own generation? I bring my own power with me, and I can flex and come off grid or do a demand response type of program where I take my load completely off the grid. I don't interrupt what's going on at the data center. Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
But I can turn my generation on, my firm natural gas generation on, and dispatch that to the grid or to come off the grid for 300 to 500 hours. Like, that interconnection process can be, like, maybe there's no infrastructure build out.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's the kind of solutions that we're putting in from the gas side to be able to facilitate all of that. And that's very simple once we.
It sounds simple. Sometimes people go like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I always just bought diesel. I got diesel over here. Not to pick on diesel. I love diesel. That oil tanker I worked on, it was a diesel engine. I love diesel engines, but
There you go. There you go. No, it does sound simple, and if you plan it out right, it actually kind of is simple. You know, it's not. It's very interesting, and I've said this for a long time. There's a lot of things we do that, yes, are complex, they're high profile, and if it doesn't work correctly, it can create a lot of issues. Right. But what we're actually doing on the site is not terribly complicated. It's gas stored in a tank, it goes through vaporization and a regulator, and you burn it just like if you had a pipe hooked up. And I think that's the interesting part is we're not trying to make this any more complicated than burn the gas just like you would coming out of a pipeline. Our pipeline, again, it just has wheels.
right.
That's all. You know, it's just stored on your facility, so you're not waiting for it to come down the pipe to get to you. You already have it there. That's really the only difference.
Sounds simple. Super simple.
Super simple. Yeah.
So what's new for Sapphire, right? You got this influx of business coming in. Are you doing anything different? I mean, I know I've read some things about you getting into LNG exports and some other stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
Does that dilute anything, or how do you view that? I mean, obviously it sounds like something you're going to put some effort behind. What does that LNG type of export do for Sapphire?
So, no, it doesn't. It's not dilutive. It doesn't really take away. We started out last year working on getting our export license for small scale LNG, which is what they consider small scale is 52 BCF of gas a year. And
What's BCF? Billion cubic feet?
a billion cubic
That's
feet.
a lot.
It's a lot.
Right. Okay.
And that's what they consider
Is
small
that a whole
scale.
ship? Is that like a
No,
LNG ship worth of gas?
If I'm not mistaken, that's like 16 ships worth of fuel.
Okay.
Or of LNG.
I'm a maritime guy, like I said. So 16 LNG ships, that's a lot.
Yes, but ours is by ISO container. That's the difference. Our permit is for ISO container, 10,000 gallons at a time, 11,000
So that's
gallons at a time.
48-foot Connex, that's a tank?
40 foot.
40-foot
Yep,
Connex
40
trailer.
footer.
That's a tank.
And it's a tank. We can put it on a chassis, deliver it to a port, put it on a container ship, and ship it anywhere in the world. So we started that process because we had
Sounds like a lot.
It is. It is. Yeah. We started that because we had an opportunity to do some power gen in the Bahamas. They wanted to change a diesel generator out with natural gas, and they wanted us to bring the LNG from Florida, send it across to the Bahamas, and get on LNG. Ultimately, project didn't go through, didn't get funded, whatever happened. Well, we already went down the process to get the permit. We got the permit. So we said, okay, well, this is a unique opportunity for us. We have this permit. We can go pursue that business in other places. So we've been doing that.
I can imagine it's not easy to get an export license. There's some paperwork involved.
There's some paperwork. Yeah, it's not the
involved.
easiest, and it's not quick either.
Right.
It's not quick either.
So you made this investment in LNG export.
Yeah.
And then the project kind of...
Project didn't go through, but what it did is it opened the doors for us to have conversations with a lot of other folks that are wanting to do the same thing. There are still tons of, you're in the power business. Right. There's tons of people in the Caribbean and the Bahamas and Latin America. They're still using diesel, fuel oils. That's how they're generating their power. They want to get off of that. They want natural gas. There's a lot of initiative from either country governments or big industry to use natural gas. So we're seeing those opportunities open up. We are pursuing it. It's not distracting because we're going after very targeted opportunities. We're not going at this from the standpoint of I've now changed my entire sales team to go after LNG export, but we are putting our name out there. We are doing some business development. I was just in Ecuador last week talking to folks about LNG export for me, import for them. They have an appetite for it. They have an energy constraint in Ecuador. They have hydroelectric. They need about 650 megawatts worth of power.
Everybody's electrifying everything, right?
Everybody's electrifying. And so what we learned on the trip was, so now the government in Ecuador has allowed, which they haven't necessarily previously allowed, they're allowing big industry to start self-generating and come off the grid. They see that as a huge way to help their domestic infrastructure. So those big industries are saying, hey, I might need 5, 10, 15, 20 megawatts worth of power. Can I get LNG for that and have that cycle? And because it's, these needs are not sitting right there at the port.
Sounds like data centers a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It does. And because these facilities, right, they're more inland, there's no pipeline infrastructure in Ecuador, so they need it by ISO container because they've got to move it around the country to get it where it needs to go. So we see some really interesting and unique opportunities in that. And if that becomes a piece of our business, I think it's good business.
It sounds like good business.
Yeah, it helps us help others.
If the customer pays on time, and it's good.
If they pay on time and it's long term, then it's great business, right? But again, it's fun too because it's another way we're helping people get energy. Like that's a big thing, and we like that. Energy is so critical for any kind of domestic development internationally. You got to have energy if you're going to build an economy. Yeah. And I don't know. You asked me a few minutes ago. How do we keep growing? How we reinvent? Well, this is what we see opportunity. I'm the kind of person, if I see opportunity and I think I can make a positive change there, then we're going to go after it. And for me personally, I'm not good at putting all of that into a nice little spreadsheet and a chart for everybody to understand. Right. This is why we're going to do it. I just see it and we go do it and it works.
Roll the sleeves up.
It always has. And there's something about seeing these opportunities and being able to just see how you can participate and how you can make that work. And it's not like every one of them goes perfectly, but obviously we're here 20 years later. And so that philosophy has worked. It's not always the easiest when, you've got, banks and investors to report to. Why are we doing a thing and why do we want to invest that money? And a lot of times it's me telling the story. But I think after 20 years, I've told enough stories and it worked that people actually listen now. And it's so it makes it fun. That's the rewarding part for me is I get to go tell the story and see this new vision. It's not distractive. We keep our core business. It stays healthy, but it's a way for us to grow. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, and with the growth that you've had and the things you're doing, and I asked this question, it wasn't trying to poke at you, but it's really a tough thing in my mind. And I haven't started my own business, but I've worked enough with folks and started businesses and helped them grow their own businesses that it's tough as you step from that foundation of what got you to where you are, right, and to look into the future of I'm going to go try something different, to keep your eye on the ball for what got you there, to not lose sight of what got you there and the success that you've had, and you try to leverage that into the challenge of the unknown of trying something different or adding to that business. And again, it can be tough, right? It's simple to do, but it's not always easy to go and execute that and keep everybody focused on, I saw this when I worked for Emerson. It's like the best customers, the house accounts, didn't always necessarily get the best treatment sometimes because you're going after the growth accounts. That's the new account, the new shiny object. And those that got you there don't necessarily always feel the love as you do that. It sounds like you've done a good job at both.
So that totally valid statement there, and that's probably one of the biggest things we struggle with today. I read a book a couple of years ago, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and we had a strategy session. I had 15, 20 people on the team read the book, and we all talked through how do you start changing that strategy of we've been really good at what we do, and it's made us successful, but to grow, we have to find other things, new things. We have to expand. But you're exactly right. We have to keep the core business. Yeah, keep what we have. It pays the bills. They're good customers. We've got great long-term relationships there. You want to take care of them. You can't let that slip. But then you have to find a way to go after those new things that show growth and scale. And, that's the whole purpose of us being here, right? We've got to grow a business. We've got to scale it. And so, yeah, it's a huge challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge we face today is, data centers, LNG export, those two things they're not just new. they're new at a scale that we haven't,
And moving fast.
and they're moving fast,
Really
and,
fast.
and they're at a scale that we've only done a little of. But now we're talking to people that want to do 10 or 20 of those kind of scale projects at one time. That kind of growth is just astronomical.
And everybody's got a piece of land, and this is what I see on our side, right? I don't want to pick on what I see sometimes, and Sam, and this is where I think my team and your team have worked together on a couple of projects that are maybe come to fruition or don't. But with AI and the data center, I mean, and there's a lot of money being put behind data center growth, right? And everybody goes, man, I want some of that data center money. Myself included.
Yeah, me too.
and it's like that. I got a piece of land, and there's a 42-inch gas pipe that runs through it, and I know the utility is going to take some time to get through. And I've been on some of those phone calls where we do the homework, we talk to the Enbridges, the Energy Transfers, the Kinder Morgans, and we find out how much capacity is in that pipe, and they say 42-inch pipe, and then you find out it's fully subscribed.
Yeah, right.
What do you mean it's fully subscribed? They can't wrap their arms around that 42-inch interstate pipe is fully subscribed by somebody, and they can't get any of that capacity in that pipe.
Right. That's right.
But it's on my land. It runs through it. I get this right of way. I get this gas. What do you mean there's none available for me? Well, I mean, if you go and talk to all the LDCs that buy that gas and subscribe, maybe you can get a couple of megawatts here and a couple of megawatts there, and then it's like, well, I want to build a 500 megawatt data center, like 10 megawatts of gas, and borrowing, stealing it from a LDC doesn't kind of get me there.
That's right.
We got another option, right? Because and that's where we've, on some of the deals that you and I have kind of talked about, without getting into specific names, it's they don't want to move away from that piece of land. They got hearts for eyes. It's like real estate. You don't ever fall in love with that piece of real estate. They fell in love with that piece of real estate, and then it's what other options do I have to bring power to site and the speed to power, and again, if they have enough land, it's so effectively what we worked on and what you were saying earlier is we can build a virtual LNG vaporization plant on site and give them a certain amount of megawatts until utility power comes in.
Sure.
And maybe bridge that gap. It's not going to be cheaper. It's not cheaper than utility gas. There's no hiding from that. But versus having land and not being able to do anything with it, at least you can find a tenant to bridge that power gap with LNG, on-site LNG until utility power comes in, and then it's a backup solution.
That's right, and that's the thing. And I think, and you said a key, kind of a key phrase there. We're not trying to compete with pipelines. We do not. Pipelines are our friends. They're our great customers. We do a lot of business with them, and
you were just saying earlier you're doing peak shaving with them. Right?
We do peak shaving with them,
volume,
and nothing about what we do is to compete against you getting a pipe. We're here when you can't get a pipe.
Do the gas utilities know that? Do they view you that way?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We don't.
Sometimes utilities view microgrids and other stuff as like, you're competing with me. It's like, no, we're not. We don't want to compete with you.
No, actually, we have.
We want to work with you, right?
Yeah, and I think we have really good relationships with the gas utilities, the pipeline companies. We work with both because they know they can call us when their customers have an issue and they're not going to be able to serve them, or something's going to happen for some interim period. We're going to be able to serve those customers. We've got a couple of gas utilities that 100% use us to grow scale before they run their pipe. So they'd say, hey, we're going to do this new residential neighborhood.
Will you de-risk their business?
Absolutely. So we're gonna work with a housing developer. He's gonna build a whole new neighborhood. 1,200 houses, 2,000, whatever it is. Hey, Sapphire, come in and be the gas utility until they get enough houses built to justify us running the pipe. And we might be there 12, 18 months. And
so
then
it's like chicken and the egg. But if they don't have the gas, they're not going to build the houses.
And so
but if they don't have enough houses, they don't have the lateral.
And they're not. So it works out great because they know we're not there to compete. We're not going to keep those customers forever, right? We're simply there as an avenue for them to grow their business as well. So it's a great partnership arrangement. And I think it's the same thing with the data centers. It's the same thing in power generation. We're here to help move business along a little bit quicker. No, it's not the most cost effective as the 20 and 30 year solution, because that's not what we're not competing against that. We're here to say, hey, do you have to wait 5 years to get your business off the ground, or can you wait 15 to 24 months? And that extra 3 years of business you get before you have that long-term solution, maybe that's justifiable. And our solutions don't fit for everything. We know that. They never have. And that's not what we're not trying to shoehorn it into. We're trying to fill the void when there is that need. And people have a destination they're trying to reach with whatever their project is. We're just trying to facilitate them reaching that destination. And that's really all we're there to do.
Have you partnered with any data center or hyperscaler or anything like that to be there?
We're having conversations. We have not come to any agreements, but we've had really good conversations that I think could lead to some type of a, partnership, air quote, where, hey, we're going to develop X over the number of years, and we want your solution to do the things when it all can't come together with the permanent solution. We want to bring you in as that gap. And
well, it helps you plan your business better, right?
Well, it does.
Your capital and reinvestment into the business.
Yeah.
I assume you, like you said with LNG, like you're reinvesting in your business. If a hyperscaler or a colo or one of the operators that goes and builds data centers for a hyperscaler to be a tenant in, or the other smaller ones, I got to imagine if they aligned with you and said, hey, here's what my schedule looks like, my production schedule.
That's right.
And they don't necessarily have to go and bid it out, and they can have, they're all looking for speed to power, right? In some form or fashion. You help facilitate speed to power.
Sure.
And I would think that they would be kicking your door down.
Well,
or should be kicking your door down.
Yeah, no.
If they're listening, they call Sam and
yeah,
kick
that's
his door
right. Yeah,
down.
yeah. Call us for sure. No, and I think that's the thing. We're having a lot of good conversations, and that's the message we're trying to get across. I'm trying to get across is, if you have a program and you see a line of sight over some period of time, next couple of years, 5 years, whatever it is, if we can be in the discussion and see that same program, I can help identify where I'm going to have long lead time, or I'm going to have challenges with getting equipment. Or
it helps you drive your costs down.
And it does. It helps drive the cost down.
And that sometimes that gets lost on people is like the more they plan specifically with you and have you part of their process, you don't have to do everything in a rush. It's not hey, can you do something for me tomorrow?
That's
I know
right.
I should have probably called you like 6 months ago, but I'm calling you today.
Yeah.
The price never goes down in those scenarios, right? Versus, hey, you're part of our schedule. Let's get this on the agenda. Let's get this on the calendar. And you have enough of a runway to go plan your business around that.
Yep.
Instead of air freighting something in, it's as on ground, right? We always use that.
Well, yeah.
You can wait for it to come in and not paying expediting fees and
Sure.
everything else, and have it into your
and
forecast.
or if we
hire trained people to go execute it.
Yeah, and if we know we're going to need 2 or 3 of those things over a 3 or 4 year period, maybe we buy all 3 of them at the same time. We even get a better price, and we stage the delivery for
and
when
you
it's
pass
needed.
That economy
and we
scale
can pass the economy of scale along. It makes total sense to us to do it that way and to be that kind of partner. The other thing that we like about the partner type arrangement is we are not a fuel business. Like, we're not a fueling company. We're not there like a diesel guy or a propane guy or a fuel oil guy. Like, you just don't pick up the phone and say, hey, send me 20 tankers of diesel for my thing. That's that infrastructure. It's been developed for over 100 years. You can do that. In the LNG infrastructure, you can't do that. I can't just take an order tomorrow and in 3 months show up with 50 loads a day of LNG. It's physically not available in the market today for that particular location. If you want that 50 or 100 loads a day, I have to plan on how I'm going to get that to you. And so that's what I say all the time. We truly are a pipeline company. Ours is just on wheels. You can't call a Kinder Morgan or an Enterprise or an Enbridge and say, you know what, I want 100 million cubic feet a day of gas tomorrow from 78 miles away. Well, you're not going to get it.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
You can do the
ours.
challenging every day, but the impossible takes a minute.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, it might take us 2 or 3 days. That's right. Yeah. So I think my whole goal, and when we're having these conversations with the data centers especially, is think of us that way. Think of us as the pipeline. We're not there to compete with pipelines, but our business model is the same. We're there to get you the natural gas you need. We still have capital infrastructure to put in. There's still a lead time for it. And there's still a ton of, commodity commitments and things like that we have to deal with. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone and get 30 or 40 loads a day of fuel brought in. because we're not a fuel company. We're a true natural gas company. We just don't have any pipe in the ground.
Yeah. We view Enchanted Rock the same way of, we're not a microgrid company, right? We're more of an energy company. We're not a generator company. It's more the speed to power, but also the gas aspect, and how do we, bring in partners like you? What is the flex capacity and working with the utility? We hate just getting labeled sometimes as, oh, you're a generator company. You build a box. Now, the box is a thing.
Yeah.
It's how do you deploy it? Is it the right technology? How, and playing with the grid and dispatching to the grid and all the different things of being a good grid citizen gets lost sometimes. We're not just a generator company. So I feel I'm empathizing with you on hey, can I just get some LNG tomorrow?
Well, and I think that's why our relationship over the years has been so well. Like when we have conversations about potential projects between Sapphire and Enchanted Rock, we're speaking the same language. Right. We're trying to accomplish the same. We're bringing energy as a solution. They have a destination. When we help you reach it. Right. That's all we're trying to do. And it's not about the little widgets and parts that go in the middle of it. All of that has to work in concert.
Let's go solve problems.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, great. This has been great, Sam. This has been very engaging. I appreciate all the things you've shared. We have a great working relationship. Yeah. Is there anything else as we kind of wind down on the hour that you would want to leave with the audience? That's hopefully listen to all of this and say, wow, look at these two guys having a great conversation.
Hopefully they didn't turn us off 5 minutes in, right?
5 minutes in, like, what are these two schlubs talking about? But what would you want to leave the audience with, or anybody listening to this?
I just think the only thing I'd leave it with is we are very excited that we've been in business 20 years. 20 years ago, I started this business out in my garage. Literally in the garage. I was doing fabrication. I had my computer on the dining table, quintessential entrepreneur. And I will tell you that sense of pride of what it makes me feel like to know that I've made 20 years, the people that work at Sapphire have that same sense of pride. And when they show up, they take that same ownership like they started it 20 years ago. And I think for the folks that we do business with, I think they see that in the product that gets turned out and the service is delivered. And, just that's what I would leave everybody with, that it's not an easy road to have a 20-year business. It's not an easy road to have a 10-year business. But we made it, and we have great partners like Enchanted Rock, and we're doing great things together. And it just makes it fun and makes it exciting. And I would leave with, I really appreciate you having me here, and I've enjoyed the hell out of it.
Somebody wants to engage with Sapphire. I mean, obviously, you're not going to give out your cell phone number and say, hey, call me up. How does somebody listening to this says, you know what, I got a project that I think I want to bring across Sapphire's desk. Yeah. How do they engage with your team?
Your two easiest things, go to LinkedIn, search Sapphire Gas Solutions, or go to our website, sapphiregassolutions.com. There's a contact page. It goes straight to our commercial team. People are on that contact page all the time. You'll get an instant response or same-day response. LinkedIn is another great one because you can find the people that are connected that you might want to talk to if you want to talk to operations or sales or engineering or whatever the case is. So that's probably the two easiest things to do is, look us up and reach out to us.
Well, excellent. Well, Sam Thigpen, CEO of Sapphire Gas Solutions, really appreciate your time today, and it's been a joy.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it. Yeah, enjoyed. Thanks.